You don't have to quit if you don't want to. But first, we have to clearly define a social media addiction. I included those words in the title because I know it's how we describe our attachment to these platforms, but honestly, it's not the best term to use. If I'm incapable of spending the day without these applications, if it irritates me, it angers me, it frustrates me, then maybe, yeah, I have an addiction. And if that's your case, then please check the description. I'll have some resources linked down there that will inshallah help you fix your problem. Otherwise, you're probably just a dopamine-hungry zombie that needs some guiding, and let's be honest, who isn't? Before we apply the solution, we have to identify the type of user we are, because not everyone wants to quit social media for good. For some, it's actually a source of sustenance, or as we Muslims call it, rizq. For others, it's used to keep up with sports like football and UFC. And you could really argue that it's a legitimate source of information, albeit not the best one. Regardless, everyone's different, and like me, you probably fall into one of the following three categories. Group 1's on life support. They heavily depend on social media for a ton of things, and life would be nearly inoperable without it for them. These would be people who have to constantly keep up with what's happening in the world. Maybe they have certain accounts they need to constantly be checking for news. And although you may think you fall into this category, you first have to ask yourself whether this is the only source for that information you're looking for, and whether or not, and this is important, the matter is time sensitive for you. Group 2 is just on meds. They use social media for lots of important things, but they know they can do without it. They're just enjoying the content they're consuming as a side effect of needing social media, but they're really just doing it simply because it's more convenient. And finally, you have the group on supplements. This group doesn't really depend on social media, but they just use it to consume content around the things they like and perhaps to stay connected to family and friends. Otherwise, it basically serves no purpose to them. And when I think of this group, I kind of imagine the dudes and dudettes who are on Discord all day. Personally, I fall into the second group, or at least I used to, alhamdulillah. I use social media to keep up with university, with sports, and to save the occasional thread of good books that came up every now and then. I could do without it, but I played the convenience card, and as a result, all my free time went to consuming content. And if the argument of, but I consume self-help content came up in your mind, then please spare me. Because both you and I know we act on less than 1% of the content we're consuming. The reason you may have failed to quit or moderate social media usage in the past is because you're setting solutions that aren't going to last. So now let's take a look at how we can apply a solution that will last, inshallah ta'ala. Step 1. Find alternatives for the things you're currently gaining from social media. If it's sports, find an app. If it's university, bookmark their website. If it's self-help content, then subscribe to email newsletters. This way, you're going to minimize the usage even if you fit into the first category. Step 2. Find things to do with all that free time you're now gonna have. You see, what's going to happen now is that instead of opening social media apps when you're bored, you're now gonna have a lot of time and you may be at a loss with what to do with it. As such, you have to prepare yourself for those situations because they're coming and they're frequent. Here's what I did. I downloaded all the books I was currently reading into Apple Books. I downloaded Ibn Kathir's Quran Tafsir into my Google Drive, and I made some of my productivity apps easier to access on my phone so that even if I was going to do something shallow, it would be reorganizing my to-do list. Finally, step 3 is choose a time window during your day where it may be appropriate to use social media. Make this time window short and make this outside of your productive hours. Ideally, if you're a Muslim, I'd also say keep it outside of prayer times. Then go into the settings on your iPhone and set up a feature called downtime. I have no idea what it's called on Android, but basically what it does is it blocks certain apps during a configured time window and unlocks them outside those hours. My downtime is set from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. Now, if you have a sense of self-control, then set the password up for the downtime yourself. If not, then have someone else set it up, and there's honestly no shame in that. I would argue that you're actually more likely to succeed that way, even if you have self-control, because then even if your brain begs you for that dopamine, you literally aren't able to give it, so it's just gonna give up. Remember, the problem is primarily psychological. It's really as easy as reminding yourself that this is not who you are and this is not what you depend on. Don't forget, there's always more to know. فَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. And as usual, in the protection of Allah, take care.
جئتنا نورا مبينا تغرس الإيمان فينا أحرص الناس علينا أقرب الناس إلينا كل نفس تقول نفسي إلا الحبيب